On October 9th, 1967, the image of this man finally ceased to haunt the agents of the CIA. Che Guevara is assassinated in a Bolivian village. That day, he became the symbol of a generation nourished by dreams of revolution. It's in the Sierra Madre that the myth surrounding Che was born. For 7 years, he and his ally Castro led the guerrilla in their fight to overthrow the Cuban regime. One of the key figures in the new Havana regime, Che was appointed Minister of Labor in 1960, but he could never remain still for long. Man of action and ideology, he formed a group of hardline revolutionaries to lead a new guerrilla, this time in Bolivia. Disguised, unrecognizable, Che arrived incognito in La Paz. After a year of fighting, of being on the run, Che's troops are exhausted. On October 7th, 1967, he has only 22 men left, most of whom are wounded or sick. That morning, they moved past the village of Pucara without being spotted by Bolivian soldiers. Then they took the road to La Higuera and stopped in the ravine of San Antonio. One of the exhausted guerrilla was Benigno, friend of Che since the age of 15. He had been at his side in every battle. He is one of the last survivors of the guerrilla. Benigno shared Che's last meal with him. October 8th, we were in a very difficult situation. Given the circumstances, we were running out of food. Things were becoming drastic. To everyone's surprise, Che ordered a meal to be prepared with all the food that we had left. That day, we were given rice, cornbread, as well as smoked meat, a Cuban specialty. We also had some coffee. Compared to our usual meals, this was a real feast. Gary Prado is now the Bolivian ambassador in London, but in 1967, he and his chauffeur were in the Bolivian Sierra. Gary Prado was at the head of the regiment that had been tracking down Che for several months. On October 8th, he finally found his trace in the ravine of San Antonio. All he had to do now was order the final assault. Around 11 in the morning, when the plan of attack was ready, I gave the order to start the operation. When we began searching the ravine, we were immediately attacked by the guerrillas. 2 of my soldiers were killed. Once we had encircled the ravine, 2 individuals attempted to escape, but their luck had run out. I had 2 soldiers stationed there. My men allowed them to approach and then suddenly stopped them, forcing them to give themselves up. No one knew yet that Che had fallen into the soldiers' hands, neither the Bolivian captain nor his fellow guerrillos. Pombo and Urbano, now in the Cuban army and stationed at Havana, were the last to see him before his arrest. My mission with Urbano was to defend the summit of the ravine at the very top of the hill. Che had given us the order, specifying that if the Bolivian army came that way, we had to stop them at all costs. At that moment, Che had decided to try and escape toward Valle Grande in order to take the city garrison by surprise. He wanted to obtain food and medicine. And he also hoped to raise the morale of his troops this way. That's the last time I saw Che. Caught in a trap in this ravine, Che Guevara had only a handful of men to fight off the soldiers' assault. Nevertheless, he continued to fight, to resist. He took cover here behind this rock. Wounded in the leg, Che decided to flee at any cost. He went up this hill, accompanied by Willie, a Bolivian guerrero. They had run out of ammunition. When they arrived in this wheat field, they found themselves face to face with soldiers. For the first and last time in his life, Che Guevara surrendered. Having arrested the two guerrillos, the soldiers called me to signal the presence of these prisoners. I was standing about 10 meters away. I walked up and realized that one of them was Ernesto Guevara. He gave me the impression of a man whose morale was very low, who realized that all his efforts, his interests and ideals were collapsing, that he had failed. One thing I remember in particular is that at one moment a wounded soldier was carried in. And even though he was from our side, Che wanted to give him first aid. Do you remember that? He was wounded in the neck, but you refused his aid. Yes, that's true. I told him, no, we'll take care of him ourselves. While the fighting continued, Che remained all afternoon in the wheat field. Then, at nightfall, he was led to Higuera. This man is the only civilian witness of his capture. In 1967, he was the mayor of the village. I saw him when the soldiers brought him down the hill. He came out of a small house and asked me for a glass of water. I gave him one. And then he came over here. No one had done him any harm. He looked fine. Then they took him here to the infirmary. It was around 8 p.m. I asked the captain for permission to give him something to eat. And he said, all right. So I gave him a little cheese and some potatoes. Che ate the food and he said, thank you, my son. And then he added, give some to my comrade. Then Che thanked me again and I left. The flights had been stopped for the night. But at dawn, October 9th, a helicopter arrived with Colonel Zenteno on board. He came with a CIA agent to confirm the identity of the prisoners. His presence was justified because he was Cuban. He worked with the CIA, and he said he knew Che. I escorted the two men to the school. There I introduced Che to Colonel Zenteno. I stayed several minutes, and then I left to continue the military operations. Several minutes later, a Bolivian soldier penetrated into the school, gun in hand. He walked up to Che. He looked him in the face, pointed his machine gun at his chest, and fired. Che died immediately. Che's assassin is this man, Mario Terran. For almost 25 years, he has been hiding in the Bolivian Sierra. Another soldier, Sergeant Schock, executes Che's companion, Willie. In this document, never shown before, he demonstrates what happened that October 9th, 1967. I aimed my weapon and then I fired a single bullet. Right in the middle here, he fell at my feet. It was the first time I'd seen this guerrillo. He also had a beard, but not as long as Che's. Blood ran from his forehead. By a strange irony of fate, during the heat of the fighting, Urbano and Pompo remained hidden all day, only 200 meters from the school where Che's body lay. They only learned the news of his death at 8 that night.
Un choque
Pompo gave me an intense look, but both of us had to look away. We were the first to learn of the catastrophe.
Porque bueno, somos los dos primeros, el que lo despierta, el que está tirado a un lado soy yo.
I had woken him to tell him the news. He had looked at me and then turned away, so I wouldn't see his tears.
No quiere que yo le vea sus lágrimas. Y como es lógico, a mí también.
It was the same for me.
Me chocó tanto,
I was so moved,
que yo no quería que él
I
viera
didn't want
las
him
lágrimas
to
mías
see
también
mine.
Cómo salían.
On October 9th, Che's body is transported by helicopter to Valle Grande. The Bolivian Army's command post is located there. Che's body remained all night in the Malta hospital, and it's here in this building that doctors performed the autopsy. The nurse that participated in the autopsy no longer works at the hospital, but she still gives treatments in Valle Grande.
The doctor asked for formalin because he was starting to smell bad. We undressed him. He was wearing 3 socks and 1 shoe. His face was gray and gentle. I went to one side, and he was looking at me, then to the other, and his eyes followed me. With his beard, he looked like Jesus. I still have a photo of him. They say it brings luck. That's why I keep it.
That October 9th, Che's corpse was exposed on these bed springs. All the villagers came to get a look at him. They filed past one by one. One of the villagers was Waldo Rojas. He was only 13 at the time. It made me sad to see the state the guerrillas were in, and Che in particular. But he seemed to be alive, very much alive. We think he was buried here, but we don't know the exact location. The soldiers, those in the know, say nothing. It remains a mystery. But for us, he is here. Perhaps out of respect, the soldiers buried him somewhere else, in a more Christian setting. On October 10th, 1967, at 3 in the morning, Che's body disappeared. A cortege of soldiers took the path that leads to this cemetery. Mythical figure of the revolution, Ernesto Che Guevara is probably buried here, under this stone, like a simple desperado.